The sanction policy is one designed to punish the people of the nation, to force them to carry out a regime change, which the U.S. couldn't do using ISIS and al-Qaeda. Remember, what's the narrative about Syria that is the one that's driving the continuation of the sanctions? It's that Assad is a brutal dictator, that he gassed his own people, that we have to support democracy. Well, look, these are just lies. Assad won the last election with a very large vote. The people of Syria are, for the most part, supporting him. The ones who aren't have been fed Western propaganda, especially British, groups like the White Helmets and others, who are in there to try and stir things up. Why? Because this is the old British territory, the Middle East, as they call it. The idea that they can use ethnic divisions, use religious divisions to keep the flow uninterrupted of raw materials to the City of London and Wall Street. The idea that Assad gassed his own people has been exposed by Max Blumenthal and others, the Gray Zone, as a complete fraud. That the people who promoted this story are heavily funded by the British government, and they are involved in British propaganda of lying for the sake of continuing the involvement of hybrid warfare and other forms of warfare to keep nations divided and to extract their raw materials as cheaply as possible. Now, what does this have to do with killing Syrian children? Well, there's no reason to continue sanctions on a country that suffered so much because of the failure of U.S. policy. The U.S. policy was regime change. That was Obama's policy. It was somewhat pulled back by Trump, not fully, because Trump did accept the idea of gassing, that Assad's gassing his own people when the evidence shows it's simply not true. But that's still the coverage in the media, that Assad is a brutal killer who kills his own people. In fact, the Syrian people have a long history, a long tradition of independence and defense of sovereignty. And who stood up for Syria? It was Russia. The Russians came in and helped them fight back the terrorists. The Iranians helped them fight back the terrorists, while the U.S. provided weapons and training to al-Qaeda. John McCain and Lindsey Graham were over there rubbing shoulders with al-Qaeda terrorists. So the problem is the United States. Maybe we should have sanctions on members of the U.S. Senate who continue to push these war propaganda policies because they want the receipts from the military-industrial complex and a place to retire when they're done, like Lloyd Austin, the now defense secretary, after he left the Army, went to Raytheon.